Land of the Dingo People by Percy Trezise. Introduction. Aboriginal oral history tells of hundreds of dream roads crisscrossing the Australian continent, which were made by ancestral beings during their travels at the beginning of Dreamtime. It also tells of a vast freshwater lake at the top of Australia and stories about ancestors like the Antamoola sisters. There is also scientific evidence to suggest that 36,000 years ago there was a large freshwater lake at the top of Australia. Scientists called it the Lake of Carpentaria, and it was also known as Ballinaga, the Big Water. This is the story of three children and their journey around Ballinaga, along the dream road of the Antamoola sisters to find their way home. Jadianta, Lande and Jalmor were far from their home and clan, the Kadimakara people. They were cold, stiff and desperately hungry, but they had survived the great storm and long journey across the Big Water, Ballinaga. The rising sun began to warm the children as they waded ashore. There were no bark gunyahs or other signs of life among the paperbark trees fringing the lake. Then a dingo howled, and Jadianta, Lande and Jalmor saw a yellow dog watching them from the top of a low rise. Jadianta started to lead Lande and Jalmor towards the dingo, knowing it would lead them to people, hopefully friendly people. Suddenly, the yellow dog was surrounded by a group of children, silently watching. The watching children saw the battered Walper and realised the sorry plight of its three passengers. They came running towards them, smiling and calling out in a strange language which the Kadimakara children could not understand. Jadianta had learned finger talk. He gestured that they were starving and needed food. He said, "Minya minya," which means meat. The surrounding children laughed and, gesturing towards their own camp, said "Minya minya." As they walked up the rise together, the welcoming children signed that they were the clan of the Dingo People. Jadianta signed that they were from the Kadimakara people on the far side of Ballinaga and blown by the great storm across the lake. From the top of the rise, Jadianta, Lande and Jalmor saw a cluster of gunyahs among trees and by the creek Walpers were moored. Smoke was rising from cooking fires and ground ovens, and people were preparing to go hunting. It was just like their home with the Kadimakara people, and Jadianta, Lande and Jalmor happily followed the dingo children. The ground ovens were opened and Jadianta, Lande and Jalmor were soon eating steamed barramundi and turtle and roasted water lily buds. The dingo people gathered around to see the castaways from a distant land. In the kinship system, all clans were divided into two halves named Black Cockatoo and White Cockatoo. Jadianta indicated they were Black Cockatoo, and an old man signalled which of the surrounding people were their brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, parents and grandparents in the kinship system. When the children finished eating, a man, Bambudji, sat down with them and spoke. To their surprise, he spoke their language. "I stand as your mother's brother, and so must help you all I can. What do you want?" Jadianta said, "We want to get back home. We can't paddle back, so we will have to walk around Ballinaga. Which way should we go?" Bambudji said, "I travelled much as a young man visiting relatives." He drew a map of the lake on the ground and said, "You cannot go north, though that is the shortest way. Up there lies the jungle land of the headhunters who will kill you." Bambudji pointed his chin south. "You must go south, but it is a very long way. You must follow in the footsteps of our ancestors, the Antamoola sisters, who travelled that way in Dreamtime, filling the lagoons with water lilies of all colours to provide food for people." The people of the Dingo believed that the Antamoola sisters left all the human baby spirits in the lagoons for future generations in the mud. They believed the old women, the Quilus, now curlew birds, looked after those baby spirits so they couldn't wander off and get lost. Then Bambudji told Jadianta, Lande and Jalmor the story of the sisters and the dream road they had made around Ballinaga. When those girls, Marby and Nadu, the Antamula sisters, had finished with the water lily and baby spirit business, they travelled east around the Great Lake towards the islands, the home of their future husbands, the Lizard Brothers. Soon they found they were being followed by that greedy man, Gidja the Moon, who wanted the Antamula sisters for his wives. Gidja followed Marby and Nadu until finally he caught them. The Antamula sisters didn't like Gidja. They decided to trick him and escape. Marby told Gidja that she and Nadu would dance for him. As they danced, the magic sisters were surrounded by campfire smoke. Then they changed into dancing brolgas and flew away. Marby and Nadu had a long journey, and along the way they had created many places. Finally, they reached the coast and sat down on a mountain looking out to the islands of the sunrise. They were waiting for their future husbands, the Lizard Brothers. I saw those sisters, Marby and Nadu, a long time ago. They were sitting up there among the clouds, still waiting for those lizard boys. The two sisters waited so long, they turned into stone on top of that mountain. Bunbudgie told the Kadimakara children the story of the Antamula sisters, so they would know how to follow their dream road around Felinaga, but encouraged the children to stay with the Dingo People while they prepared for their long journey. The three children felt very much at home, as in the land of the Dingo People, everybody called them by their relationship to them, whether brother, sister, cousin, son, or daughter. With the help of sign language, it wasn't long before the children of the Kadimakara people soon understood the children of the Dingo People. Their newfound relatives helped Jadianta, Lande and Jalmor build a bark gunya, then gather materials to make fish spears, nets, fishing lines, digging sticks, and everything else they would need for their long journey home. Bunbudgie even gave Lande a young dingo. Her name is Laska. She will always look after you and warn you of any danger, he said. A full moon cycle passed while Jadianta, Lande and Jalmor made the implements for hunting and fishing like fire sticks, stone knives and dilly bags to carry them in. They each had a roll of softened paper bark for sleeping blankets. At last the children were ready for their journey home. Bunbudgie said, "I've sent up smoke to let the people of the Magpie Goose know that you three children are coming. They will let you cross their country, following the steps of the Antamula sisters." It was time to go. The older Dingo children went with Jadianta, Lande and Jalmor to the Moon River, where their land ended. They showed them some walpers moored at the bank for the Kadimakara children to use to cross the river. One of the older boys, Mulby, signed that he would help them paddle across and then bring the walper back. The Kadimakara children placed their belongings and Laska the dingo on the walper and pushed off, waving bark paddles in farewell to the Dingo children. The river was fairly wide, but there was hardly any current, so it was easy to paddle. Mulby pointed out places on the far bank where tall reeds had been chopped out to clear landing places. Walpers were moored there, but there were no people. They were paddling past the reeds when Laska snarled. Suddenly, there was a huge splash as a giant crocodile launched itself out of the reeds and seized the boy, Mulby, in its jaws. The crocodile ripped Mulby off the walper. Mulby's flailing legs hit Jalmor and knocked him into the water as well. Jadianta and Lande looked at the swirling water where Mulby and Jalmor had disappeared. They could hear screaming and wailing coming from across the water from the Dingo children. Then Jalmor's head rose out of the water and he was seized by a sobbing Lande and hauled back on the walper. Jadianta jumped into the shoulder-deep water and began desperately dragging the walper to shore. Jadianta reached the bank and they all grabbed their belongings and ran away from the water, followed by Laska. Safe on top of the bank, they turned and waved to the wailing Dingo children on the other side. They all knew there was no hope for poor Mulby taken by the huge crocodile. Behind them, voices were calling. People were coming to meet the three children and wondering why the distant Dingo children were crying and wailing. Jadianta, Lande and Jalmor were no longer in the land of the friendly Dingo people. They were alone and in the land of the Magpie Goose people. Jadianta, Lande and Jalmor and their dingo pup Laska have to journey around the Great Lake Bella to find their way home. They will follow the dream road of their ancestors, the Antamula sisters, and travel through the unknown land of the Magpie Goose people, land of the Emu people, and into the terrifying land of the Snake Ben. The Kadimakara children's journey back to their home will be long and dangerous. Will they ever see their family again? The glossary. Ancestral beings. People who came down from the stars at creation time and turned into every species of life on earth, animal, and plant. Bella, the name for the Great Lake. Bella equals big, Norga equals water. Black cockatoo, white cockatoo. The names of the two halves of the Aboriginal kinship system in these clans. Dream Road, the path of an ancestral being during dreamtime. Dreamtime, the time of the creating of ancestral beings. Finger talk, a sign language which is understood by many clans. Gunya, a circular hut covered with paperbark. Kadimakara, a bullock-sized marsupial similar to a wombat. Kadimakara People, a clan on the east side of the river. Quilus, old women of the lagoons who looked after the human baby spirits during dreamtime. Walpa, a raft.